hi everybody, this is Anna. I am the Youth Services Librarian at Little Boston with Kitsap Regional Library. And this is Tea Time Tuesday, an opportunity for kids to talk about things that are going on in history and around the world. Today we're going to talk a little bit about civics, which is how the government works and how we are citizens and participate in the government. And we are talking with our friend Jennifer Holdsworth from Washington, D.C., who's going to help us out and teach us a little bit about how the government works. And welcome everybody, and we'll turn it over to Jennifer.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to be talking about one of my favorite topics, which is civics and government, especially Civics 101, because to me, that's one of the most exciting topics for everyone to learn. It is what exactly makes up our government. And we call it Civics 101 because that's a very basic level, right? What are the branches of government? What is a branch of government? How many branches of government are there? How does a bill become a law? Federal, state, and local government, and an introduction to the Constitution. So that's what we teach in Civics 101. I also teach a couple of other classes that are really advanced, but we won't talk about those today. Just so you know what I do for a living, I work on political campaigns. So I work for all kinds of people that try to run for office. Could be mayor, could be president, could be senator, congressman, governor. So these are all the people that I've had the pleasure of working for in the past. President Obama, President Clinton, Hillary Clinton, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi, Senator Cory Booker. I've gotten to work for lots of people. I also spend time on TV. I'm a commentator on the news, and I tell people all about what's going on that day and some of the things that they might want to pay attention to. So here's some pictures of me on the news. Here's some other people that I've worked for. Mayor Pete Buttigieg ran for president this year. He was also mayor of a town called South Bend, Indiana. And this is a picture of me just a few weeks ago doing my favorite activity in the whole world, and that is voting. You can see it says my little polling place behind me, and I've got a sticker in red, white, and blue that says I voted. It's one of my favorite things to do is to go to the polling place and vote. This is a picture of me when I first started falling in love with politics. I was about 7 years old, and my mom and dad took me to Washington, D.C., which is where I live now. And I got to stand in front of the Capitol building and take a picture back when I was really, really, really young, a lot of years ago. But this is when I started to fall in love with politics and fall in love with the U.S. government. This building is called the White House. The President of the United States lives at the White House, and he represents the executive branch of government. The President is the executive of the United States of America. Now, what's this building? I just gave you a little hint. This is the Capitol building. And the Capitol building is where the legislature works. And the legislature is made up of two houses, the House of Representatives and the Senate. And so together, they make up the second branch of government, which is called the legislative branch. The legislative branch of government. So we have the executive branch of government with the president, and then we've got the House of Representatives and the Senate, who are the legislative branch of government. Okay, now this one's tricky. What building is this? This is the Supreme Court of the United States of America. Who works at the Supreme Court of the United States of America? They're judges, but they're actually not called judges. They're called justices, and there are 9 of them. So there are 9 justices that sit on the Supreme Court of the United States, and that is our third branch of government, our judicial branch. So we have the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch of government was all under the federal, also state government, regional government, and local government. So does anybody know what the head of state government is called? You have one in your state. the head is the governor. Even though I live in Washington, D.C. now, I grew up and I lived all my life in a state called New Jersey. And so the governor of New Jersey right now, that's him. His name is Phil Murphy. And this is the capital of New Jersey. There's also regional government and there's also local government. So does anybody know what the head of local government is called? So if federal government, the head is the president, and in state government, the head is the governor, who's the head of local government? I gave you a hint before, I worked for one. This is Mayor Pete Buttigieg. So the mayor is the head of the local government of your town. And every town in America has their own mayor and council. And the council works as the legislative branch on a local level. So I know that can be really confusing. So there's 3 branches on all these levels of government, but they're all called different things. So it can be really, really confusing for people to keep straight and to remember and to understand. So all I want you guys to remember today are the 3 branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial, and who works in each one of those branches: the president, the legislature or Congress, and the Supreme Court. So now, what does the government do? The government is in charge of passing the laws in our country. When your parents are driving and they have to follow the speed limit, that's a law. Can somebody just come into your house and take whatever they want? No, they can't. That's a law. Are you allowed to just go through any intersection when there's a red light? Nope. There's a law against that. So all of these branches of government get together and they make the laws. But it's very important to know how the laws are made. Out of those 3 branches of government, which branch, executive, legislative, or judicial, is in charge of writing the laws? Literally taking the idea from their head and writing it down on a piece of paper. Whose job is that? That's the legislative branch. And these are all of the fun processes that they have to go through in order to pass that law. So then what do the other 2 branches do if they already wrote the laws, right? The president has to say yes or no. The president, if he's going to say yes, signs the law. If he reads it and he says, you know what, you should have to stop at a stop sign. That's a good law. I'm going to sign it. I'm going to say yes, that's a good law. Or he can say, no, that's a bad law. I don't want you to have to do that. And then what can he do? Does anybody know what it's called if the president says no to a law? He can veto it. He can veto the law. So, okay, the legislative branch wrote the law and the president said yes or no. So what does the judicial branch do? If a bunch of people in the United States decide to speak out and say, hey, we don't really think that law that those 2 came up with is fair. We don't like it. We want to change that law. They can go to the judicial branch and say to the justices, check out what these other guys did. Make sure you read this law very, very thoroughly, and then you tell us whether you think it's fair or not. So the judicial branch interprets the law. So the legislative branch writes the law. The executive branch enforces the law, and the judicial branch interprets the law. They get to say whether it's fair or not, right? So that's a lot of processes. That is really, really confusing because I'm not the best explainer in the whole world. I think that there's actually a really great video that you guys should watch. Hopefully it'll help you understand the process I just talked about a little bit more.